come, he will fail to act. If he did that, he himself would be in breach of the Constitution. And therefore, he has been enjoined to act as any responsible leader or president of the Republic of Ghana would be required to do, as stipulated by the 1992 Constitution. The fourth point is also that we cannot have a sacred cow mentality in the way that we handle state affairs. Every single public official, from the president to the speaker to the chief justice to Supreme Court judges to ministers to all public office holders, are bound by the provisions of Ghanaian law. Indeed, it was the former Australian Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, who once said that when you join the game, you play by the rules. So no public official is allowed to raise him or herself above the laws of Ghana. It does not matter how sensitive your position is. Once Ghanaian law dictates that certain processes be undertaken in respect of some alleged misconduct, the rules must come to play. And that is the only guiding principle that President Mahama has operated by in all of this. So any claim, any inference, any innuendo, any imputation of a political motive to the president in respect of these processes are unfounded, they are false, and cannot be allowed to stand. And I wish to place that on record. As yet, absolutely no evidence of same has been furnished in any way, shape, or form. And therefore, I am minded to strongly reject that effort. Unfortunately, Her Ladyship, the Chief Justice herself, has added to this commentary, which initially was the tone of elements of the opposition. And it is deeply regrettable that this should happen when the president has been above board and conducted himself in strict compliance with the Constitution of Ghana. The other point that I wish to also place on record is that the attempts to link the dastardly killings of some Supreme Court judges and a military officer to this case are most disingenuous. To begin with, this government and President Mahama have nothing to do with the killing of any judge. Second, there's absolutely no nexus between the petitions that have been brought and that unfortunate incident in our past. So any effort to link the two is regrettable and should not find space in this sort of discourse. It is most undesirable, it is most unacceptable. Now, the venue in question is the Edu Lodge. Yes, it is close to the Osu Castle, which used to be the former seat of government. As I speak, there are government agencies that operate there. So it is a public place. The Osu Castle is a public place. You can go there to conduct official government business. Beside it are private residences owned by Ghanaians who move freely in and out of their residence, even though they are situated very close to the Osu Castle. So the impression that a facility in the vicinity of the Osu Castle necessarily makes it intimidating or foreboding is completely misplaced. It is unfair. It is not justifiable. Now, Edu Lodge is a state facility which is often used to house high-ranking officials who visit the Republic of Ghana. It belongs to the state. The decision to use that place was not that of government or President Mahama. The committee requested that they needed facilities of a certain status that could house their activities and that could facilitate a smooth running of the proceedings. And that facility was available. It is equipped with modern amenities that will facilitate the work of the committee. And the state only offered it upon the request of the committee. Let me also state that that facility is not intimidating. It is like any regular state facility where business can be conducted to the extent that it is put in the right shape. Wherever these proceedings were held, it will still be in camera, as clearly stipulated in Article 1468 of the 1992 Constitution. So that the proceedings are being held in camera is only in compliance with the Constitution. So it doesn't matter where it is held. And any security measure put in place is only intended to secure the place so that persons who are not authorized to be part of the proceedings do not come there and create any inconvenience. I believe that even if the hearings were held at the court premises, it will still be under significant security controls to ensure that only authorized persons have access to the place. So to describe Edu Lodge in the terms that her leadership, the Chief Justice, did was most unfair and unjustifiable. It seeks to obscure the process and bring in unrelated matters that seek to cast some aspersion or ill motives on government for affording the committee a place to do its work. As I indicated, we have no interest in violating the Constitution by going into the merits of the case. And that is why government has refrained. Let me put it on record that government itself has had cause, indeed the president himself had cause, to lament the way in which some correspondence around this matter got into the media. You will recall that the very first sign of any leakage was the letter that the Chief Justice wrote requesting for copies of the petition. Before the letter got to the presidency, it was in the media. And you recall that in the president's response, in which he also took the opportunity to forward the petition to her, we raised that issue, that it was not acceptable. Indeed, we had cause, the president had cause then to ask his executive secretary to mark the documents that were being sent to the Chief Justice in order to guard against any leakage. So at no point has anybody leaked anything. Also, it must be noted that even the media houses that first broadcast the content of these petitions were media houses that you can say are aligned to the opposition. And they are the ones who have gone to town with this sort of thing. So to attempt to cast aspersions on the presidency is most unfortunate, and it causes what should be a smooth process leading to the determination of the merit or otherwise of the petitions that have been brought. So in summary, I would say that what has happened today is most regrettable. And as government, or as the President Mahama is committed to upholding the rule of law. We cannot have a situation where, depending on who is involved, the Constitution is set aside. All Ghanaians are equal before the law, in the same way that our courts have dealt with individuals in accordance to law. If members of the judiciary themselves are alleged to be engaged in some wrongdoing, the processes laid down and spelled out by the Constitution ought to be respected. And that is exactly what has happened. I thank you very much. If there are any questions that you have, you may ask them.
So,
yes.
The embattled Chief Justice made reference to veiled threats on her life, and much as you're concerned about sticking to the sanctity of the constitutional procedure she needs to go through, you should equally be worried about this threat on her life. What's government's response to the specific issue about threats on her life?
The Chief Justice, more than anybody else, perhaps in this country, should be aware of the platform that is available to address such threats. Komla, if today somebody sends you a threat, you know exactly where to go to seek redress in the matter. And that is what I would say about it. Yes, Akusia.
One of the groups that petitioned, the Shining Stars group, the Chief Justice in her press conference indicated that her research done by her team show no traces of authenticity when it comes to that particular group, that the group has not been registered. Can you authenticate that booth if we know anything about the Shining Stars?
First of all, I'm not sure whether there are provisions covering this, whether there's a requirement for authenticity, as it were. There were also individuals. How do you authenticate the individuals? What matters is that they have raised issues, and the Chief Justice was given opportunity by the President and the Council of State to provide initial responses, which then form the basis of the determination of a prima facie. The President, in consultation with the Council of State, came to the conclusion that there was a basis to proceed further. The President then, in accordance with Article 1466, I believe, set up the committee, as spelled out by the Constitution, and gave them the petitions to look into. The processes have been ongoing for quite some time now. So as far as the President is concerned, every law, rule, or regulation or process that has to be adhered to has been respected. So I do not know how this particular matter in any way impinges on the integrity of the process that has gone on so far. But then again, the Chief Justice has had cause, at least on 5 occasions. The Chief Justice and others, I must indicate, have had cause at least on 5 occasions to go to the Supreme Court to seek redress in the matter. And on all occasions, the Supreme Court has upheld the process as is currently underway. And so that, for me, should resolve the issue beyond any reasonable doubt. Yes, Max.
Yeah. Okay, so my question is there a timeline that you're looking at for the committee to finish the work? Because in her speech, she made accusations that there's an attempt to frustrate her. There's also an attempt to intimidate her to get her to resign. And she made that point clearly and forcefully that she's not going to resign. I'm curious to know whether there's a specific timeline by which this hearing, should be done.
Max, as I've been at pains to explain all evening, the President can only proceed on the basis of law. The law spells out what can and cannot be done. The Constitution does not set a timeline, and therefore the President cannot impose a timeline. Indeed, at this moment, the matter is entirely out of the hands of the President, insofar as it is seized with the committee. The President cannot direct the committee on anything that they should or should not do. So it is only they who can determine the processes that are laid down to undertake this particular activity. And as and when they finish and make recommendations as stipulated by the 1992 Constitution, the President is bound to act in the manner that they recommend. So I am not in a position to speak to any timeline, neither is the President. It is only the committee that can determine when sufficient time has been had to look into the matter. Yes. Is there any? Yes. Mm-hmm.
Are there any specific reasons why the hearing has not been done in camera? Because we know the Constitution says it clearly in 146.
Well, you have your question is self-explanatory. You've answered it. The Constitution says it should be done in camera, which means it should be done in secret.
Yeah.
Yes. So it has been done in secret, not so.
Yeah.
So why can there be a complaint about what the Constitution? First of all, there are 2 things that we must distinguish from each other. You can disagree with the constitutional provision. There are many in this our country who have criticized the use of contempt by courts to punish people who they perceive run extrajudicial commentary on cases that are pending. There are many people who have disagreed with it. Indeed, I have on occasion expressed my disagreement. But that is the law. Until the law is changed, you cannot say that you disagree and so it should not be applied. Same applies to this particular process. So whatever view you may have of it cannot stop the law from working. And that must be clearly understood. So we must separate criticism or misgivings about the law as it stands from adhering to the law. And as yet, nobody has been able to say that this particular law under Article 146 has been violated by the President. And that is a point that must be stressed to the hearing of all. So, if the law says that this process must be held in camera, the President has no choice than to act in ways that respect this. And I believe the committee is also respecting it at this. Indeed, the Constitution does not allow for commentary on the substance of the allegations. And there are those who may criticize the Chief Justice for violating same. We have not done that. And as I have indicated, I am not prepared to speak to the content of the petitions because we are not allowed to do so. And the President has acted in ways that the Constitution stipulates. So there cannot be a problem with this. That is why all those who have spoken have not been able to point to one evidence of infraction by the President in all of the things that have happened thus far.
Finally, we are getting this news that the Chief Justice and her legal team has filed a judicial review at the High Court.
She is entitled to do so, and we encourage her to avail herself of any opportunity there is to vindicate her rights. Yes.
Honorable, the suspended Chief Justice in her press briefing mentioned that she has received some call from individuals asking her to resign willingly or voluntarily to save her image. Has any government official or you yourself in any way called her to resign willingly to save her image?
Why would I do so? That will be the basis for me to place such a call. I have never spoken to the Chief Justice in my life. Second, no government official has placed such a call. If individuals in their private capacities, in their private lives believe that they have a relationship with her and want to call on her to act one or the other, it is a personal decision that she would have to take. But government or the President cannot force her or even suggest remotely that she should resign. So that must be placed on record. To be fair to her, I don't think that she said that any government official has asked her to do so. So we must also correct the records as they stand. Yes. Yes.
The first time, the Chief Justice leaked her own response before getting to the President. The second time, she chose to hold the presser and level serious allegations against the government. Do you suspect that the Chief Justice has an ulterior motive to paint this government black?
Well, I cannot ascribe any motive to the Chief Justice except to express regret over an act that may appear to violate the Constitution. But I don't think it would be fair to ascribe any motive. As I said, she has every right to adopt any measure she believes will aid her make her case, except that we all know that it is better to do so using lay down processes. Beyond that, I don't think that anybody can ascribe any ill motives to her. We have a responsibility to correct any misimpression created about how the President has acted. That is the responsibility that I'm discharging today. That is all that there is today. Indeed, if there had been no references to murdered judges and the venue, which is a state facility, or some political vendetta or agenda, I would not be addressing you. If it had been purely based on sentiments about the outcome of some court cases or even the process that the committee is using, we would have no locus to wade into the matter. If the committee is minded and they have a way to engage the public, so be it. But I have only addressed you for the sole purpose of correcting what is a false impression that there's some political agenda at play or that the venue has been chosen for purposes of intimidation and as a way of using some dastardly occurrence in the past as a psychological tool to wear anybody down. That is what we decry. We don't think that it has any place in this discourse. It is most unfair, most unjustified, most unwarranted. And that is the reason why I have been compelled to speak to you to clarify the matter. Thank you all for coming. Yes.
That's you're still live here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7, also on Kesmi 107.1. In Tamale, we're live on W93.5 NY and beyond. That was the press conference by Felix Kwacho Fosu, Minister in charge of government communications there, responding to some of the issues that the Chief Justice Her Ladyship Geto Tokono put out in that press conference earlier about the venue for this hearing, which is the Edu Lodge close to the Osu Castle. She had indicated that that particular location brings back some memories because her uncle was one of a number of judges who went through that place and were murdered. Phyllis Kwachiofosu indicates that the link between that unfortunate act in our history and what she's going through now, the process that she's going through now, is unfounded because there's no correlation between the two incidents or the processes at play right now, and the fact that there are other government agencies working at the said Edu Lodge, and that cannot necessarily be described as a security zone, as the Chief Justice put it, and that any security measure that has been put in place there is meant to secure the place from any group of persons who will try to intrude and then also obstruct the work of the committee. And he responded to the fact that it doesn't matter how sensitive your position is, it doesn't preclude constitutional processes being applied or kicking in against you if there is enough reason for that to be done. You heard him also respond to the position that she had that's the Chief Justice had indicated that all of what is going on in her view is a plot to get her out of office under the clout of Article 146. And she says that that particular manner breaks every rule on how justice is delivered. She had also indicated that the removal process, as historic as it is, clearly violates the dictates of the Constitution, and though she's in the process alone, its effects far reaches beyond her, and that is the reason why she addressed the press earlier today. Phyllis Kwachiofosu also indicates that the president has only followed the process and the dictates of the Constitution in ensuring that this process takes place as it is playing out now, and that the president has not at any point violated the Constitution in any way, shape, or form. She also, that's the Chief Justice, during her press briefing or that press conference earlier today, also indicated that the hearing being conducted at the Edu Lodge, making everyone seem as though it is one that is following the process, is meant to intimidate her and get her to resign, because some have suggested that it will be to her own good to resign or retire so that she would save some credibility for herself. She has indicated that she is not going to resign or retire. It is not an option for her or any Chief Justice for that matter. And despite great personal discomfort, she has marshaled all the arsenals at her disposal to fight this matter for as long as it will require. She's also indicated that it is her honest duty to speak up against anything that she deems wrong, and she's not seeking to cling on to any position or office as Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana. These are some of the issues that the Chief Justice, Geto Tokono, has been putting out, which has also elicited the responses from the government, essentially the minister in charge of government communications, Phyllis Kwachiofosu, putting out the responses as we saw a few minutes ago live from the Jubilee House. Then, this is Hot Edition, 20 minutes after 5. We're going to be engaging some more conversation on this particular issue. Kamala Kloche is our presidential affairs correspondent. He's joining us on the telephone right now from the presidency. Kamala, can you talk to us right now? What's the core reaction or the response that Phyllis Kwachiofosu gave to a number of the issues that the Chief Justice, the suspended Chief Justice, also said in that press conference that ended not too long ago?
Hello?
Hello, Kamala, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Alfred.
Perfect. Now we just heard the government spokesperson, the minister in charge of government communications, speaking about some of the issues that the chief justice, the suspended chief justice, put out in her press conference. What was the government response to that notion communicated by the suspended chief justice that she sees the entire process as a ploy to get her out of office, and she even suspects that the petition given to her may be different from the one given to the committee hearing her petition, because she requested for a copy of the petition from the committee and she wasn't given. Come on.
Well, basically, the government, led by the spokesperson of government communications, did not go into the specifics of the various issues or the processes that she is going to, except to stick to the various allegations that she directed at the government. As for the process, the minister indicated that at all material time, the president has stuck to the constitutional provision, and not any one single individual has provided a scintilla of evidence that the president has breached the constitution in that regard. And so all material times, every other action taken by the president is purely a constitutional dictate, and the president and the government, for that matter, will continue to stick to the provisions of the constitutions as enshrined regarding the removal or otherwise of a chief justice. Now, on some specific allegations that was made, for instance, the chief justice spoke about the use of the Edu Lodge and all that. First off, government says that it is a government facility located within the presence of the Osu Castle, used by high-ranking senior state officials and other visiting heads of state whenever they come to Ghana. And when the committee requested for a place to hold a meeting, which constitutionally should be held in camera and in secret, it was the best place they found and gave to the committee to be used. And the facility has met the requirements as the committee. Now, the issue also raised by the Chief Justice regarding funds, it brings some regarding killing of justices and also a military officer at that particular location, carefully chosen by the government and the committee, was unfair to her and brings memory. Government says that's unfounded. It's clearly part of a state facility, even if it was the judicial service or the presence of the Supreme Court or any other area within the judicial service. It also falls within the secrecy as enshrined by the Constitution, and so it unfounded the claims that she's made. Now, also to the issue about some people who have called to tell her to resign, and all that, government flatly rejects that no government official or no individual from the government side, including him, Felix Kwatiofosu, has ever called the Chief Justice asking her to resign. And he also rejects the claim that all of this is skewed just to make the Chief Justice leave office because of the specific allegations that have been leveled against her. And so at all the allegations that she has raised, government says there's no scintilla of evidence indicating that government has breached the Constitution. What is important, though, is that she's going through the constitutionally mandated provisions for her required in 146, which the president is sticking to.
Now, there appears to also be that clear position that government has taken not to get into the merits of this particular case. Kamala, is it not? Because the constitutional provision bars any sort of public engagement on the merits of the case. But the government communications minister speak about the Chief Justice's decision to, as it were, now put out the details of the petition in this press conference you addressed?
That will not necessarily fault her for it. It is a choice that she decided to make, but the most important thing for them is that on the side of the government, they will continue to live by the dictates of the Constitution, where the provision is to the effect that every other thing should be held in secrecy and in camera. The more reason why government or no assigns of the government have leaked out anything regarding the petition. In fact, the very first time the president personally even responded to what Chief Justice wrote, the president expressed his misgivings and disgust, for want of a better word, how the Chief Justice even shared details of what she was writing to him, to the public, before it even got to him. But however, the presidency has moved on and indicated that they will continue to live by the dictates of the Constitution. She decides to do a press conference, said they do not have any qualms with that because it's a constitutional right to free speech, but the committee and the government will continue to live by the dictates of the Constitution. That indicates that all the processes until her removal or otherwise will strictly be in accordance with law that states that it should be in camera or it should be secret.
Komla Kloche is our senior presidential affairs correspondent, giving us...
Appreciate it.
As always, Komla, appreciate you. Giving us updates and also some reactions to the suspended Chief Justice's press conference earlier today by the Minister in charge of Government Communications, Felix Kwatiofosu. But let's backtrack a bit and listen to exactly some of the issues that were put out by the Chief Justice earlier today during the press conference.
As Chief Justice, if you read all my responses, you'll find that I provided all the records behind these decisions. Then he complains that I recommended judges to be appointed to the Supreme Court, so I should be removed as Chief Justice. Now, anyone who knows how appointments are made with recommendations from the Ghana Bar Association, the Attorney General, and the Chief Justice will know that this last complaint only shows ignorance of a very long-standing tradition.
So she would rather let help. So that's the Chief Justice, Gato Tukono, there addressing the press. And then also she indicated a reason why she is not going to resign, as has been suggested by some others. She would rather stay on and fight and ensure that, in her view, the right thing is done.
What Mr. Ofori did not seem to know, which I stated in my answer to that allegation, is that the judge his case was transferred from had a family crisis and had to leave Ghana suddenly for an extended period, were not defended because they were true and I had no defense to them. As Chief Justice of the nation, who has been given the privilege and obligation to lead administration of justice, I should not turn tail and run when I know the implications of not defending false and unwarranted charges. If I resign under these circumstances, I will be saying that this flawed, unknown, and opaque process is acceptable. It is not. Finally, let me respectfully say that the current bizarre proceedings I have brought to your attention presents a twist to our nation's democratic journey that we all ignore at our own cost. My humble view is that Ghana has come too far in the 33 years of the Fourth Republic not to be concerned about the unconstitutionalities that have been designed not to affect just me personally as Chief Justice, but all judges and public officers subject to removal processes of Article 146, if this one is successfully carried out without being questioned. Behind me is every judge in the country. Behind me is every commissioner or head of an independent constitutional body in the country. If this is successful, it will be tried on anyone. I am not countering these processes for myself, but on account of the leadership burden that I carry. If the nation is willing to accept these developments in its democratic journey, it must be understood that I sounded the warning and the nation took the decision to be passive about it. I cannot share the burden of those involved in designing and implementing this enterprise of pretending to use Article 146 proceedings to remove a Chief Justice through unknown and unlawful means.
That's a Chief Justice there. Gertrude Eraba Saki Tukono there. And one person who's been following this process right from the beginning is the former director of the Ghana School of Law and lawyer Gonzalo Sari is joining us on the telephone right now. So thank you so much for agreeing to talk to us here on Hot Edition.
You're welcome.
And I start off from the last words of the Chief Justice, as we just heard at the press conference, that this entire process in her view is a pretense in using Article 146 to remove a Chief Justice. Meanwhile, there is, in her view, an agenda that is at play. And then also the fact that she's using this press conference as a warning and sounding that warning to Ghanaians. And when all things play out, it would be the case that the nation did not heed to the said warning. I mean, was there any merit, and would you say she was right in coming out to fight or put out her case in the court of public opinion?
No, the wrong approach. I don't think that this is the first time, that we are witnessing in a purported removal of a Chief Justice. This thing started, way back in 1960 or so, soon after independence and then, the Republic. And, we have the likes of Sir Akokosa and Sarko Diado. And therefore, to say that she's, sounding a caveat or warning, that, Ghanaians must share in this, it's too late, in the day. I think that I share, frustrations with her, but, the path he has chosen is not the right one. The approach is totally wrong. The committee probing the allegations was established by the president. If she has any misgivings, she must address her concerns to the president. Now that the committee is working, she cannot appear in the court of public opinion today and then next day find herself before, the committee established to go into, the allegations of impropriety against her. I think the two, cannot coexist. And being the head of the arm that watches over the justice delivery system, she must be the last person to express disfavor with the judicial process, to express a loss of confidence in the judicial process, to express frustrations, about the justice delivery system. It is, politically wrong, judicially wrong, legislatively wrong, and the fourth estate wrong. She's gotten it all wrong.
Now, but if she felt that this entire process was skewed and orchestrated, in her view, against her, you're recommending that she should have been quiet about it and not put out in the public, but rather address the matters to the president, the same person that she is, in her view, although not saying it explicitly, but subtly suggesting that this entire process has been orchestrated to get her out, and this process also was set in motion by the president as well? How would she trust the person that set the process that she says is set out to orchestrate her removal as the same person to address her concerns?
Okay, let's put it this way. Let me begin by asking this simple and straightforward question: when did her leadership, Chief Justice Justice Tokono, come to realize that the whole thing was orchestrated? When did she come to realize that it is a political vendetta? When did she realize that it was orchestrated and skewed to remove her? If she knew all this and yet she consented and proceeded to request the president to provide her with a copy of the petition, then she has waived her right. This is not the right time, to express any musings about, what she, now feels is the president. This is skewed. This is skewed, and therefore I refuse to lend any credence, to this body. I will not appear. Take your post. Period. But you have agreed. From the word go, right from the inception, it was skewed to remove you. I mean, she was entitled to refuse to appear and to tender her resignation. She did not resign, and I supported her. And so it's no news. Once she has, participated, it is too late. If she now, gives notice of her intention to resign, the law will be against her, because, it will be to the president to decide whether to accept or refuse. And I can predict that if she, tenders a notice of resignation today, it will be refused, because the Supreme Court has already made a pronouncement that if Article 144 or 146 is triggered, you cannot, after commencement, ask, to resign. The Supreme Court has already made a pronouncement in the Amwa case, and therefore she cannot avail herself of that, notification. So she must keep quiet and go through the process. She must not bring her banters into the court of public opinion and expect, to win the sympathy of the public. What would that do, to the Article 146 removal process? Nothing. Nothing. So she either, keeps quiet, and then participate, or swallow her pride. Stop silent you, and then get done with it. She can tomorrow morning go to the president and say, take your job. Finished. Now expecting the public to take sides is neither here nor there.
Well, you said she has the option of going to the president and say, take your job. That is an option that she says it is not even on the table. She says it's not even on the table, and that any respectfully,
the president can't force her.
Yes,
but the law that no employer can force, can compel an employee. Likewise, no employee can force himself or herself into the employ of the employer. So if she feels that she's been given a raw deal, my submission is the public, the general public, is the last entity she must approach, because the general public cannot do anything about her case. They only sympathize, express some empathy and say that If, wishes were horses, beggars would ride. But in this instance, it does not apply. So she must keep quiet. I mean, she shouldn't bring the general public into a nuisance, not at all. When she, got the job, it was not, the general public that seconded whatever motion, that was moved for her appointment. The general public, it's our representatives vetted her, found her suitable. She was approved. The president acted on the parliamentary scrutiny and approval and gave her the job. So if now the president is saying that certain citizens are petitioning and therefore the petitions must be gone into and she's against it, the only thing for her to do is to bow out and tell the president that, look, whether I'm not giving you the option, you have no discretion. I have given what I see as a skilled process. I don't want to lend credence to the end result, because that would be a mockery of democracy. Therefore, take your job. But there's something called history. History will not be kind to her. History will rather be kinder, to her if she goes through, the entire process till the final verdict is given.
And she also insinuated that she indicated that the committee did not give her a copy of the petition that they had when she requested for it. The only petition that she has is what the president gave to her, and that she cannot assume that the details of the petition the president gave to her is the same as what the committee has. I mean, is there any basis for that suspicion that the president would give different details of his petition to her and the committee would have different details of the petition as well?
There's no basis whatsoever. I mean, and what I expect the public to do? Do you have a copy of the petition? You don't. I don't. So if you runs amok to us, that we should dress her properly. We don't have the appropriate clothes to dress her up. We don't. So she should go back to the committee and make the demand there that I want to see this thing I had is the same petition that is in front of you, on which I'm being tried. Now, if they refuse, she can go to court. That will amount, to a breach, a constitutional breach. That is not what I understand her to be alleging. And what I expect the public to do in this instance, we don't have copies of, we don't even know the color of the petition, whether it's red or yellow, or brown or whatever. We don't. And because the process is founded on something called prima facie evidence, and that the proceedings must be held in camera, the general public, is unable to lend any helping hand.
So, I appreciate your time on this. And maybe quickly before I let you go, how do you see this action that she's taking to address the press playing out for her? Is it going to be in her favor or otherwise?
I mean, it is an unwise approach, in holding the press conference at all. Let me share this with you. Because a committee was established by the president, whatever, rantings, whatever, expressions, whatever she articulates, they are intended for the ear, nose, eye, and mouth of the president, not to the general public. You must understand that. If you go to court, whatever questions are posed, whatever questions are thrown at you, whatever answers you give in response to the questions are directed at the judge, the court, not your opponent, not your adversary. So what she's done now, she's rather attacking the president. It's not good. It's not good for a Chief Justice, to do that. The Chief Justice must have absolute confidence in the justice delivery system. It is her system. She is superintending the system. If the system is rotten, she must fix it. She must not run, amok to the general public and expect the general public to fix, a broken system. If the system has been broken, he must provide, an antidote to it before the committee investigating allegations of impropriety. The general public, has absolutely no contribution whatsoever, to make, in this matter. Everything, rests with the appearance and participation, the committee that has been set up, and everything will rest finally, with the report that, the committee will present to the president and what the president will make of the report. If she feels that in the middle, of swimming across the river, she's getting drowned, she should retreat. And I'm, suggesting a line of least resistance. Mr. President, I thank you very much. I had absolute trust in the process, you triggered. But it seems to me that, I can read the writing on the wall that what you had, what, you plan to be well-intentioned is turning into a farce. And therefore, I cannot continue to lend any, legitimacy to the process. So it's up to the president, and all of us, who decide one way or the other who, was right and who was wrong. But bringing us in at this stage is an affront to common sense. An affront to common sense. Common sense expects the Chief Justice of a country to do what is right, what is law, what has legality, not, to turn, to sucker, with the general public and expect that the general public can overturn something that has, been done in accordance, with the dictates of the Constitution.
And I do appreciate your expert analysis on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Kweku Asare is a former director of the Ghana School of Law, private legal practitioner himself, giving some details and reactions, analysis to the Chief Justice press conference today. And there's a lot of reaction to this. Martin Pibble is private legal practitioner. He says that the Chief Justice may have just slipped into the court of public opinion and opened herself a lot more for scrutiny.
I think, yes, Kevin, fortunately, that week you moderated, and the policy that I've seen shows that when the Chief Justice is on a private visit, then that one, her security detail must be with her. And then when it's an official trip, that one, it can be any other person. At least the last time I read it, that was clear to me. When it's a private visit, it must be a security detail with her. To the money involved, the tickets especially, you would see that generally these are not large sums. So she will get sympathy, especially from a lot of people who have abused the public purse. Lots of public servants have abused the public purse. Lots of public servants have traveled, all right, business class, etc. Even the last time the president now had to give an order that ministers should not travel first class, right? And also, did they say even business class? President Mama gave a directive that there should be no first class. Then people said, nowadays, very few airlines even have first class. Then there was the question whether business class is covered. Let's dig that document and you see. But one thing that's very clear that you may not get many people contesting is that by talking openly about the money, what she brings to the fore is that definitely, these are small sums. Me, I'm not going into the merits. I'm not discussing. This is what she has said. I'm not referring to any petition. These are things that she's referred to. So she's trying indirectly to cut the sympathies of many thousands of Ghanaians who have abused the public purse. So when you have, let's say, whoever is listening and has abused the public purse, in any manner, will now be wondering that, hey, Charlie, I mean, this could have happened to me, and many have gotten away with it. So, you know that Bible saying that let he who is without sin be the first to cast the stone. And I'm telling you that people who have abused the public purse on first-class tickets, etc., you know, will have sympathies because then they are careful that, but this thing we've done, Charlie, in the past, hey, somebody is answering for it, etc. So that side, she's cutting some favor. As I said, that is what she has said. I have not referred to any petition. I have not talked about any petition. I'm just basing this on what she has said.
Because you're very careful in not getting into the details of this petition, would you say that to the extent that the Constitution is very clear on this process being in camera, but the person who is at the center of this entire process deciding to come out publicly to talk about it, is this act of the press conference and getting into the details of this petition contemptuous from what you said?
Yes. It is clear from Frank Ejechun, right, that and the Justice Berry matter, the Supreme Court has been clear that we shouldn't discuss the merits and the contents of the petitions. Yes, that we shouldn't discuss those. The Supreme Court has been very clear. So we are not to discuss the merits and the contents of the petitions, right? So that much is very clear that what Justice Tokoni is reading are really from the petitions. Then that's the Supreme Court has frowned on that. Yeah.
No,
yes.
So
in a number of cases,
she's in clear contempt of the.
It's not a court of law. We cannot say that it's in contempt of the committee. Yes, we can't say so. But
you know, we could say that she's in violation of the rules.
Yes, it's a violation of Article 146, this is Clause 8, and also as further explained and clarified by the Supreme Court in the Frank Ejechun case, and also in the in the Derry case, the Justice Paul Derry case. So what the Supreme Court said was that in the Justice Derry case, then they say yes, you may file.
Very well.
You may file that this is a violation, and then they also even mentioned that in that case the rules of court should also come out specifically.
That's Martin Pebu, private legal practitioner there. So live here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. We're also on Kesmi 107.1 and on W93.5 in Wa and beyond. And let's shift focus just a bit away from the Chief Justice, the responses and matters arising. And a member of the opposition NPP has been talking. Who is this?
He is criticizing the current crop of leadership for what he describes as an undemocratic approach towards electing the party's next flag bearer. The comment comes days after the NPP set January 31, 2026 for its presidential primary, a move that has stoked controversy. Dr. Arthur Kennedy spoke on Agenda on TV3 with Beatrice Edu.
If they said that I am sure that they are good men and women, their hearts are in the right place, but their brains are in the wrong place. I think they were consulting the same people they were talking to who were telling them we're going to win in a landslide. I think this is a very bad decision, doesn't serve the party well, and like the speaker said, it's anti-democratic. because for general principles as well as even the party's own principles, that it generally does not make sense to select your flag bearer that early in an election cycle when the government that came in would have spent barely a year in office. The issues that will be salient in the next election have not developed yet.
Well, that's a member of the opposition New Patriotic Party, Dr. Arthur Kennedy, speaking there. The Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, PURC, has announced a 2.45% increase in electricity tariffs across all customer categories effective 1st July 2025 as part of its quarterly review mechanism. The tariff adjustment, which applies to residential, non-residential, and special load tariff customers, is based on a detailed analysis of macroeconomic and operational factors, including inflation, exchange rate fluctuations, and rising fuel costs. According to a statement issued by the Commission, the upward review is necessary to sustain utility service providers and ensure a reliable electricity supply. The adjustment takes into account a projected average inflation rate of 20.67%, a Ghana cedi to US dollar exchange rate of 10 Ghana cedis, and an increase in the weighted average cost of gas to USD to 7 US dollars of million British thermal units. The third quarter's generation mix remains unchanged, with 28.8% from hydro sources and 71.2% from thermal sources. The Commission also factored in 488 million Ghana cedis in outstanding revenues from previous quarters, as well as the cost implications of maintaining reserve capacity to ensure grid stability. Well, here's a summary of the key adjustments that have been made. And for the Lifeline customers, we have 0 to 30 kilowatt hour, and then the tariff increases from 77 Ghana cedis, 63 pesos kilowatt hour, to 79 Ghana cedis, 53 pesos per kilowatt hour.
Well, so essentially we're going to have to pay more for electricity at least.
Yes.
You know, and the reaction has been about the current economic situation and whether this is the right time to do this. And this is why I bring in Mr. Nsia Benjamin, is the Executive Director of the Center for Environmental Management and Sustainable Energy. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Alfred, for having me.
And you can understand the general reaction to this, and in view of the general economic condition of the situation we find ourselves in right now, and the exchange rate is getting better. At least we're seeing the city perform relatively stable against the major trading currency, in this case the dollar, and to the extent that we understand now there's a lot more dollar transactions by the ECG, but yet we're paying cedis. Some argue that this increase should have been absorbed by the current performance of the city. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with them, and I was even expecting price of electricity to decline in the third quarter of 2025 based on the determinants of this particular price. First of all, the major determinant of the end-user tariff locally has to do with the exchange rate and also the inflation. Most of the time, energy mix have always been constant for some time now. For example, if you look at the first quarter, second quarter, and third quarter, has a composition of 71 for thermal and 29 for energy. The only variable indicators we'll discuss here are the exchange rate and also the inflation. Maybe sometimes with the weighted average cost of which is also seeing some stability. If you look at the percentage change in the price of these weighted average cost of goods, we're expecting prices to decline because the appreciation of the cedi has given government some gains and the disco some gains. Over 1 billion Ghana cedis has been realized as a result of the appreciation of the cedi, because we computed the first and second quarter tariff adjustment with 15 Ghana cedis, 69 pesos to the dollar, and the cedi has appreciated over 30% since May, and that means that any tariff, any bill paid, the end user is paying 30% more of what they are expected to pay. And that also realizes over 1 billion Ghana cedis to the government and also distribution companies or other power sector service providers. So if we talk of the arrears, which is the only reason why government is increasing this particular tariff in the third quarter, we think that the arrears should have been absorbed by the appreciation because there's that windfall of about 1 billion Ghana cedis. Two, if we talk of procuring fuel, we also think that the windfall could have also been used to procure the fuel we're talking about here, because the projection for heavy fuel oil for the whole year is around $33 million. Yes, there are other emergency fuel we procure, but these are not fixed on the tariff decision or tariff structure, because sometimes there are certain years that you don't procure fuel. Because if we take data from Energy Commission, in the year 2021 and 2022, we didn't procure fuel. We didn't procure fuel because there's a full flow of natural gas to feed into these thermal plants for power generation. Yeah, this year, there are certain supply disruptions in the first quarter and also the last part of the third quarter and the mid of fourth quarter. But these supply disruptions do not warrant a 27% of a cost structure that the consumer even doesn't know. As of now, the PRC was not transparent with us to tell us that 27% of what cost. That is an issue there. Now, the second issue also has to do with the reserve capacity. The PRC could not state categorically what reserve capacity are we using, because sometimes the reserve capacity falls as low as 12% of installed. So are we using the 12% in computing this particular tariff, or we are using the 22%, or we are using the average 18% to compute? That was not stated in their tariff decision. So we think that prices should have declined. However, because of lack of accountability, lack of transparency, and lack of participation, the PRC has gone ahead to increase this end-user tariff by 2.43. And I think it's an unfair practice by the regulator, because if you look at their section 538, section 3C, it talks of fair pricing, which takes advantage of, or which takes into consideration the interest of the user as well as the interest of the producer. But in this case, they took into consideration the interest of the producer and also not the interest of the user, and that is not fair to the end user locally.
Thank you so much, Mr. Benjamin Sia, for your time on this matter. Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it. That's Benjamin Sia, is the Executive Director of the Center for Environment Management and Sustainable Energy there.
We are still live on Hot Edition, 3FM 92.7. We'll be back with the business news after this break with Bismarck Ibusa. Please stay.
I'm not afraid to be different. I be loud and bold. I know they blend in.
Born from a vibrant culture, I did dance to the beat of my own drum. I'll be the vibe.
In a world where everybody is a follow trends, I create them. I be trailblazer, and I be one of originality.
And when we raise a glass, it's a celebration of who we are. Crafted with flavorful African herbs and fruits to honor people. Enjoy your origin. Drink responsibly. Not for sale to persons under 18. Not recommended to pregnant women. This advert is FDA approved.
For the game, the
Hello, good evening and welcome to Business Segment on Hot Edition with me, Bismarck Ausa. Coming up tonight, civil society organizations, CATS International and Center for Environmental Management and Sustainable Energy urge PURC to halt 2.43% electricity tariffs increase. We'll bring you details. Thanks for your company. Now to the details. CATS International Accra and the Center for Environmental Management and Sustainable Energy, CEMC, have called on Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, PURC, to halt the 2.43% tariff increase, demanding a detailed disclosure of the tariff adjustment methodology and underlying assumptions. The two, in a statement, condemned the PURC for its lack of transparency in the decision to review electricity tariffs effective July 1, 2025. They stressed the adjustment violates fair electricity pricing for the mutual benefit of the government, producers, and end users. There is more in the following Newsdesk report.
Significant reduction in electricity tariffs due to the appreciation of the Ghana cedi against the dollar and declining inflation, which are key determinants of end-user tariffs. Instead, the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, PURC, announced a 2.43% increase in electricity tariffs, introducing new end-user tariff determinants, contrary to expectations of a reduction in the third quarter of 2025. According to the group, the PURC failed to engage stakeholders before introducing fuel cost and reserve margins into the tariff decision, stressing the frequent upward tariff adjustments could lead to the creation of an inefficient energy sector. They urged the regulator to rather focus on addressing systemic issues like the commercial and technical losses that have bedeviled the electricity sector.
And that was a 3 Business Newsdesk report on a statement by CATS International and CEMC calling on PURC to halt the 2.43% electricity tariff increase. The Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology has revealed plans to introduce rebates on taxes on electronic vehicles as a means to encourage its adoption. The previous government had earlier introduced a tax waiver on electric vehicles for commercial use. Speaking at the 5th edition of the 2025 Environmental Sustainable Summit, organized by the Business and Financial Times, Sector Minister Murtala Ibrahim Mohammed stated that the move has become necessary to protect the environment amid global challenges.
In collaboration with other ministries. The Ministry of Energy now, which also has something to do on renewable energy, we do that in tandem. And let me give you this example. E-vehicles, electronic vehicles. I have already sent a cabinet memo. We are looking at how we can move from the use of fossil fuel to electronic, means of having this vehicle. There are 2 reasons why many Ghanaians are not interested in getting the e-vehicles. 1, we don't have the infrastructure. If you have an e-vehicle, then you must have the charging system at home.
Manager at Ricolto International, Josephine, of data-driven decision-making during a stakeholder engagement on national interpretation of global standards. She urged farmer-based organizations to formalize their structures to facilitate data collection, enabling more targeted and effective subsidy.
We did this contextualization in Uganda, where we've worked with the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperative to be able to use this standard to segment all the cooperatives or farmer organizations in the country. Now they use that data to be able to provide subsidies. So because they have that data now, they know tier 1 farmer organizations, tier 2, tier 3. So based on that, they are able to target, okay, this group needs more support. But what do we see in Ghana? We give blanket subsidies, so it's not targeted. So everyone, sometimes the subsidies goes to people who don't even need it. So we've seen that groups are there, but the question is, are they organically formed? How is the leadership? Are they really trained to be professional leaders, to move the organized group in a professional direction, or they are individuals who form these groups and therefore have their parochial interests?
You heard the voice of Josephine Eklu, Inclusive Agribusiness Manager at Ricolto International. And that brings us to the end of the business segment on Hot Edition with me, Bismarck Ausa. For more business stories, please check out our website, s3news.com. Sports is next with Ore Kwampofu. Please stay.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the sports segment here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. My name is Ore Kwampofu. We start off from the Ghana Premier League, where Asante Kotoko have made 5 signings following a mass exodus at the Kumasi-based club as they look to bolster their squad ahead of next season's CAF Confederations Cup campaign. Among the new recruits are Hubert Jao, Francis Akwa, and Johnson Owusu-Opong. My colleague Solomon Amankwa profiles some of Kotoko's latest additions.
He's been one of the sought-after young talent in the Ghana Premier League. For the last 2 seasons, Hubert Jowu has been an integral part of Brecum Chelsea's midfield, making sure his position is well protected in that particular team. And again, if you look at Francis Sakwa, if you are talking about some of the most prominent young left fullbacks in the Ghana Premier League with Bechem United, Francis Sakwa was there. The last 3 seasons, he's been knocking on the doors of various national teams. The Black Galaxy, he was part of the team until he was dropped, but then later on he had a call up again and he showed why he's supposed to be one of the best left fullbacks. And of course, Johnson Owusu-Opong, he was with Dreams FC some 2 seasons ago, left to Portugal. He's played with Maritimo. He's shown glimpses of being a top goal scorer. So clearly Asante Kotoko are doing this business and knowing very well the positions they need to fill. They've lost a lot of they've let a lot of players leave, and so if you've left midfielders, you need to bring in very articulate midfielders who would come and man that position. Again, if you are losing attackers in Samson Eduku and the likes, you need to bring in somebody who is more experienced or could get more goals than Samson Eduku. So clearly, I think that it is a very good strategy. They are not signing wholesomely, but then they are filling the spaces they've lost.
And so that was my colleague Solomon Amankwa speaking. Let's do some women's football, because on July 5, the 2024 Women's Africa Cup of Nations will be commencing in Morocco. As part of preparations, the 3 Sports team brings you the second episode of WAFCON Daily, a comprehensive show providing insight into the competition put together by my colleague Akosieje.
Today, I will be reminding you of a top performer at the Women's Nations Cup. My name is Akosia Eje. Follow me throughout this journey as we build up to Morocco 2024. Did you know that before Asisat Oshoala and Rashidat Ajibade, there was the perpetual Ngwacha, one of the best players to ever play or partake in the Nations Cup, so far as the Women's AFCON is concerned. The midfielder won 5 of the 7 tournaments she played in over 14 years span from 2002 to 2014. Her performance was nothing short of amazing when she scored a haul in Nigeria's 5-0 win over Cameroon in the 2004 finals. She also set an individual record by scoring 11 goals during the 2010 tournament, 2 short of her own 9-goal record set in 2004. With her 34 goals in 7 tournaments, Perpetual Ijeoma Ngwacha was voted African Women's Footballer of the Year in 2004, in 2005, in 2010, and 2011 by the Confederation of African Football.
And so that was Akosieje, who's my colleague here at 3 Sports, and she will be bringing you daily updates on the Women's AFCON, which kicks off on July 5 in Morocco, and so you do want to stay in touch with that. But speaking of women's football, the Black Queens just beat Benin by 4-2 in a 6-goal thriller to win their second pre-AFCON friendly game. Now remember that in their first friendly match, they beat Malawi by 3-1, and this time they had to come from 2-1 down at halftime to beat Benin by 4-2. Let's get back to men's football and go to Europe, because Olympique Lyon have been relegated from Ligue A to Ligue D after the club have been saddled with a lot of debt. Lyon, however, have an opportunity to appeal the decision, which took effect on Tuesday. French football analyst and sports marketing consultant John Wafo analyzes what the decision means for the French club.
Lyonnais finds itself really relegation into Ligue 2, not because of poor performance on the pitch, but due to their serious financial mismanagement of the pitch. The club's troubles begin and escalated in late 2023 when the DNCG, French football's financial watchdog, raised concerns over Lyon's growing debt, which reportedly reached 175 million euros. In 2024, the DNCG issued a formal warning and placed the club under financial restrictions, including a transfer ban and also close monitoring of its payroll. But despite these red flags, and despite the club owner, John Textor, attempting to inject fresh capital, and he even sold some assets, including a 45% stake in Crystal Palace, and sold several players, more recently Ryan Cherki going to Manchester City for £32 million. It seems that those efforts really fell short. So yesterday, the DNCG made its decision official. Lyon is set to be relegated to League Two. And it's really a dramatic fall for a club that has won 7 Ligue 1 titles. And it's a clear signal that in French football these days, not only heritage is important, but you need to be able to manage your club properly. Otherwise, you'll have to face the consequences of those. Yeah, there is hope for the club. I mean, yesterday after the DNCG issued its statement, Lyon also issued its own statement saying that they plan on making an appeal. The success of that appeal will really depend on how convincingly they can demonstrate a credible financial recovery plan. Because since 2024 in November, John Textor, that really, and the Eagle Football have insisted that they're taking the right steps with reducing some of the losses, restructuring some of the debts, and then selling players like I mentioned before. But the DNCG really wants to see proof of liquidity and long-term viability. And without that, Lyon's historic stature is not going to be able to help them. They want to be able to see the proper numbers, otherwise they will still be relegated into Ligue 2 next season.
So that was Ligue 1 and French football follower and sports marketing consultant John Bafo. Finally, before we go, the Club World Cup is in full flight. A host of clubs, including Manchester City, Bayern Munich, Paris Saint-Germain, Inter Miami and Chelsea, have booked their place in the last 16. Another team that will be hoping to join the party in the round of 16 is Champions League finalists Inter Milan. Inter need to secure a win against River Plate in Group E's last game to seal their spot in the next round. Derek Aim, who has been covering the Club World Cup in the United States, looks at what needs to happen on the final day of Group E's action.
In Group E, we have River Plate with 4 points, Inter Milan follows with 4 points, and then Monterrey FC also has 2 points. Then Urawa Reds languish on the bottom half of the table with nothing at all. And going into the final round of games, obviously Monterrey, who picked up a point against Inter Milan, and River Plate will play against the Whooping Boys, that is Urawa Reds. And as it stands, if they win the game, they're going to have 5 points. And so with the outcome from the game between Inter Milan and River Plate is very key. So if Monterrey beats Urawa Reds, it means that they're going to have 5 points with whatever goes difference that they have. For them, they have 0 goals. So if they happen to beat Urawa Reds, then they can be on top of the pile. For Inter Milan, they have +1 goal, and River Plate has +2 goals. So, I mean, it all depends on what is going to happen. If River Plate manages to beat Inter Milan, then River Plate will be on top of the group, and they will either take on Borussia Dortmund from Group F. So, and also Mamelodi Sundowns, don't forget Mamelodi Sundowns also has 3 points, and if they manage to win their game, they stand a chance of actually qualifying from the group. So it's very interesting in that particular one. But keep an eye on River Plate and Inter Milan. That is absolutely a big one, because if the game ties up, it means that one of the teams would have. I mean, it means that Inter Milan are going to be eliminated. That is if Monterrey also happen to be Urawa Reds.
And that's how we wrap up the sports segment here on Hot Edition. My name is Oreku Ampofo. Remember that you can get some more sports stories on our social media handles at 3SportsGH. The show continues right after this.
Also on Kesmi 107.1 in Tamale and on W93.5 in YMB. The Office of the Special Prosecutor has arrested 5 more individuals as part of its ongoing investigation into suspected corruption and related offences connected to revenue assurance contracts between the Ghana Revenue Authority and the Strategic Mobilization Ghana Limited SML. Those newly arrested include high-profile former public officials and associates of SML. Among them are Evan Seduse, Chief Executive Officer of SML, Philip Mensah, former Deputy Commissioner Legal at the Ghana Revenue Authority, now serving as legal consultant to SML, Kofi Nti, former Commissioner General of GRA, and Joseph Kruk, and also Faustina Ajoko, both officials of the Public Procurement Authority. 3 of the individuals were detained overnight after failing to meet bail conditions, while all 5 were subsequently granted bail. These latest arrests follow the earlier detention of the other former top GRA officials by the OSP. They include Reverend Dr. Amishadai Owusu Amwa, former Commissioner General of the GRA, Isaac Krenchel, former Commissioner of Customs, now the General Manager of SML, and Christian Tete Soti, former Technical Advisor at GRA, now Managing Director of SML. The OSP's probe focuses on the legality of the contracts awarded to SML, the procurement